Fast radio burst research, testing new meta-optical services, a record-breaking amateur rocket launch, and Artemis 2 training begins.
This is Trekzone's Talkin' Science.
This is the podcast where you get the science and space headlines now. It's been just over a week since the 15th Andy Thomas Space Forum was held, and we're ready to bring you our extensive coverage of the event held in Adelaide, which will move to being held annually in the City of Churches from next year. The second conference will move between the Australian states, set for New South Wales first up in December. We caught up with a few of the exhibiting companies, including Valiant Space.
Valiant Space is an in-space propulsion company, so we build non-toxic chemical thrusters and propulsion systems for small satellites to get them from A to B once they're in space. So that sort of in-space mobility is really what we're all about. We started in 2020 out of a team of us that met at university, and through that we built out quite a deal of capability in propulsion development. And that culminated with our first engine tests back in sort of March 2020, and eventually sort of moved into the in-space thruster realm. So that's where we've since now gone into building the VS1 thruster, which is a 20 Newton in-space thruster to help move satellites around the sort of 50 to 100 kilo plus satellite range.
Now, I saw an interview recently you did with the ABC talking about the analogy here with the rocket. It's not designed to get a satellite into orbit, it's designed to move it around and keep it in orbit.
Yeah, that's right. So we don't provide the launches to space. So we do the in-space part. So you can think of that as catching a 737 from Brisbane to Sydney. We provide the service which gets you from the airport to your hotel. So that last mile transportation is a really key part of most, if not all, satellite missions in the current day and age. And that's really driven by the fact that people are being deposited off in very standard orbits because of low cost to launch. Like SpaceX obviously has really pioneered that with their rideshare missions. But then that means that satellite companies are wanting to get to that optimal orbit, which might not be exactly where they've been left off. So that final transportation solution is really what we specialize in. It's what we provide our customers, and they really love the fact that these thrusters that we're building are high thrust chemical thrusters, which means that you can get to that destination in a matter of minutes as opposed to months compared to other products on the market.
Images of an exploding star whose light was distorted by gravity may help us pin down just how fast the universe is expanding, according to Australian and international research. Scientists currently use two methods to try to measure the Hubble constant, or the expansion of the universe, but so far they've produced different results. This new research uses a new technique that involved looking at 5 images of a distant supernova called N-Revstal, which is located about 9.3 billion light years away from Earth. The light from this exploding star was warped by gravity as it travelled different paths to Earth, creating those 5 images. And by looking at the different images, the researchers were able to measure how much the universe had grown. Well, an international team of researchers has revealed new evidence on the nature of mysterious fast radio bursts, which are objects in space that produce brief, intense flashes of radio waves from distant galaxies. Leading astronomers from Western Sydney University and CSIRO contributed to the study, which shows for the first time a reversible magnetic field around an FRB. Published last week in the Science Journal are observations of repeating FRB, dubbed 2019-0520b, made over a 17-month period using the ultra-wideband receiver at CSIRO's Moriang Radio Telescope, as well as the Green Bank telescope in the United States. The study found FRB 2019-0520b is surrounded by dense plasma that is not only highly magnetized but also highly turbulent, with the direction of the magnetic field changing twice during this period, a phenomenon never observed before. A new first-of-its-kind engineering study has been commissioned by the European Space Agency to prove the reliability of meta-optical elements for space use, in a collaboration between ESA and Bulgarian startup company Laboria Expert. and TMOS, the Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence for Transformative Meta-Optical Systems. It will determine whether meta-optical components can withstand the pressures of space launch and prolonged exposure to the space environment. Meta-optics is a new field of optical physics that aims to replace traditional optics like mirrors and lenses with meta-surfaces, which are thinner than a piece of cling wrap and will greatly reduce the size, weight and power requirements of future space technology. LP 79118D is tidally locked, about 2.5 times the size of planet Earth, and orbiting a red dwarf star 90 light years away. And it's been theorised to have a surface littered with volcanoes whose emissions could sustain an atmosphere a new study has documented. Utilising data from tests and some of the last infrared optimised data from Spitzer before its decommissioning in 2020, astronomers have found 3 exoplanets in the system, with 2 of them orbiting relatively close to each other, causing an elliptical orbit each time they fly by, thanks to those gravitational forces that are exerted. The theory for the volcanoes is grounded in our knowledge of Jovian moon Io, which endures tidal heating thanks to gravitational deformations from Jupiter, causing internal friction, heating the interior and producing the volcanic activity on the surface. Well, students at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University have set a new record for an amateur rocket launch when their Deneb rocket flew to 47,732 feet, about 1.6 times higher than Mount Everest. The third launch attempt from the Mojave Desert in California topped the altitude in the undergraduate liquid-fueled rocket category, broke the sound barrier and reached Mach 1.5 during the 26-second flight. Congratulations, guys. Well, the Artemis 2 crew have begun training for the historic return to the moon. Christina Cook, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover and Jeremy Hansen have 18 months to get ready to sail to the moon for humanity's first time in 50 years. They'll be the first humans to ride the Space Launch System to orbit and take command of the Orion spacecraft. And we will, of course, be keeping a close Talkin' Science eye on the mission progress. Well, we are podcasting on YouTube and across every podcast app. Find each of Trekzone's shows on Google or Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn and more. Plus, Trekzone's channel on the iTunes library gives you a one-stop shop for all of your goodness. So jump onto your favourite podcast app, find Trekzone and subscribe. On YouTube, membership continues to be available. Early access for less than a cup of coffee per month. Add in behind the scenes for our next Star Trek fan film for the same price as a streaming service. But this way you get a direct, tangible benefit and my personal thanks. And of course, our social media feeds always have the week's podcast highlights and Star Trek episodes. This is our 20th year to the world. We are Trekzone. I am Matt Miller. We're going boldly since 2003.